But first, before I get to today's shocking inflation figure, 5.1%, up from 3.5%, 5.1%. I mean, this shows the Morrison government got it wrong with all this pandemic spending, and the Reserve Bank bungled it too. And you're going to pay, I'll tell you how. But anyway, this huge jump in inflation, I think, should finally shock us out of this bizarre fantasy, particularly in the media, that Australia can somehow change the climate and that we should blow billions of dollars in trying. Now, I'm passionate about this. I've been following this for decades now, and particularly passionate now because two of the Morrison government's election candidates have just been caught out refusing to lie. They insist on telling the truth about global warming, and they've now been dumped on by their own party or by journalists. Because telling the truth about global warming, we have learned, is not wanted. It's evil. And this is going to show you how stupid this supposed debate really is. Now, one of those two candidates is, yes, former Resources Minister Matt Canavan. And the other is someone you've probably never heard of, Colleen Harkin. She's running for the Liberals in Macnamara. Well, let's start with her. Harkin was caught and shamed today by the 9 newspapers. Liberal hopeful backs not just Catherine Deves, the transgender activist, and, well, women's rights activist, but she also said that warning about a climate emergency bordered on child abuse. And the papers had a gotcha, a tape of this shocking moment when Harkin even told a meeting that the world was not about to implode next week, she said, or even next year from global warming, to the horror of a young female activist there.
We all want a clean environment. We all want that. But to teach children that there is an emergency is nothing short of almost abuse. Because what happens is we now have 8-year-old children. Let me finish. We have 8-year-old children who are stressed about the environment. We've taught them to be stressed. We have 16 to 25-year-olds, 75%, who say that they can't sleep at night, stressed and anxious about the environment. Even if Australia magically abided by the Greens' 75% reduction in the next 6 or 7 years, it would make zero difference. China is increasing by the day more than we put out in a year. India is increasing by the day more than we put out in a year. Even if we went down that path, we make zero contribution to the end result.
Well, how dare Harkin tell that audience these truths? I mean, some in the audience heckled her, some attacked her, someone obviously was filming her and shocked her, and the 9 newspapers got on her tail, and she got so scared that she issued a written apology. I accept my language was clumsy. What else could she do? Her own Prime Minister won't defend her. And when did he ever say exactly what Colleen Harkin just did? But what did she say that wasn't actually true? Of course the world is not going to implode from global warming. Why is that even controversial? People are living longer, they're eating better, world food crops keep setting new records, and we even raise more meat. The tiny increase in temperature that we have seen, less than many predicted, seems to be giving us a greener world. More rain, fewer cyclones, at least in our region. Yet we have, just as that candidate said, we have crying children on these school strikes, nearly hysterical with fear.
If they're not going to change anything, then what's going to happen to humankind? What's going to happen to the whole world if no one does anything?
We also have young women saying, no, they don't dare have children. They don't want children because the world is burning.
We have been warned that children born today will be fighting and struggling for food by the time they are teenagers.
There's even a new organisation called Birth Strikers, set up for women refusing to bring a child in this supposed climate catastrophe.
The people who joined Birth Strike feel unable at this point and struggling deeply with the decision to have children or not. So we're a solidarity group and we're also a protest group trying to bring that awareness of the severity of the climate crisis, and in fact this is actually an existential, i.e. life or death situation.
This hysteria is just amazing, frightening really, and it's overwhelming. And as you see with the so-called climate independence, it seems to be sweeping through the upper middle class and women particularly, and their daughters. But for children, just children to be left hyperventilating in terror when the world in fact has never been richer, never been better fed, is, look, you have to say, it is child abuse. And that's bad enough. Well, that's bad enough. But it was in fact Matt Canavan's truth bomb that caused the biggest explosion in politics. The Nationals MP has been saying for a long time, net zero is dead. This emissions target signed up to by more than 70 countries, including China and Australia.
Net zero is kind of dead anyway. I mean, Boris Johnson's already said he's walking away from it. He's pausing it because of the situation in Ukraine. Germany is investing in coal and gas infrastructure. And the Biden administration is running around the world trying to get all sorts of countries like Venezuela and Saudi Arabia and Iran even to produce more oil for themselves.
Now again, Matt Canavan's been telling the absolute truth here, and it's been saying it for a while. The journalists just pounced on it yesterday in today's papers for, well, I don't know why it suddenly blew up now, but there you go. And he's telling the truth, even though there was this media pylon today, even though colleagues were telling him publicly to pull his head in, even though he was disowned by his Prime Minister today.
That's his view. It's no surprise. He's held it for a long time. That debate has been done in the coalition and is resolved, and our policy was set out very clearly, and it has the strong support of the government.
Absolutely. That debate's been done. We're moving on. Don't come to me with your facts. But to repeat what Canavan said and what Colleen Harkin also noted, look, tiny Australia, we may tying ourselves in knots trying to cut our emissions at huge cost. But around the world, there's a frantic scramble right now to find even more coal and burn it. Doesn't anyone even read the headlines anymore? Britain, desperately short of electricity, has paid its last coal-fired power plants a fortune to stay open for longer, and it's called for more gas explorations, even looking at fracking again. Italy, well, Italy says it may have to reopen old coal-fired stations. And the Czech Republic, Bulgaria, Romania, Germany, they've also, all of them, indicated that they're going to have to burn more coal too, rather than pay blood money to keep using Russia's gas. China, well, it had these big blackouts last year, and China's leaders have ordered more coal be mined and burned. And India, just 2 weeks ago, reported a massive jump in their coal supplies for their electricity network. Nearly 25% more coal this financial year. But here we are in Australia, as if none of this was ever happening, quarrelling like megalomaniacs over cuts to our own insignificant emissions, as if we, Australians, are so mighty, in fact, that we could cool the planet and lower the seas all by ourselves. And sadly, I don't exaggerate when I say that, because the Age newspaper, sort of Bible of this global warming religion, last week actually said, and I quote, Labor would be less of a climate wrecker than the coalition. A climate wrecker. I mean, it's actually pretending that both parties could either wreck the climate or change it for the better, save the world, lower the temperature, the world's temperature after this election. I mean, what kind of deceit is this? How mad do you have to be to believe that you could do that? Because even former Chief Scientist Alan Finkel, and he's a warmist, he admitted, I played that clip many times, that we could shut down every Australian power station, every car, every plane, every factory, go to black in every home, and the effect on the climate, he said, would be virtually nothing. But global warming is a religion. That means you do not dare tell the truth, particularly if you're a politician. The Liberals won't, Labor won't, the Greens won't, the climate independents won't, and sadly, nor will most journalists.